Check this out. Look at his description. Tim Pool brings you breaking news from around the world and commentary on top of news topics, blah blah blah. So he claims to bring us breaking news from around the world, but I mean, we'll see if he brings up the fact that 4 American soldiers died in Syria and it's all Trump's fucking fault. We'll see if he brings that up, or if somehow he just blames the Democrats. Like, goddamn Obama, if he had never invaded Syria, those 4 soldiers would still be alive. So I don't know, we'll see. Republicans crush Democrats in ratings. Trump black support skyrockets. Trump re-election. Is that right? Is that what's going on? Tim Pool? Okay.
Today we have a lot of really great news for Donald Trump, suggesting that he may be on track for a massive 2020 re-election victory.
Do you hear that? You hear that, Baby Yoda? Got some great news. Donald Trump's on set to be president another 4 years. Yeah! Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray! Yeah! Oh man. Sweet.
First, the political conventions are over, and the Republicans crushed the Democrats by about 25 million total viewers, and Trump raised $76 million during the Republican National Convention. Shortly after, it was announced that the Iron Range, a Democrat stronghold, several cities have come out and endorsed Donald Trump for his re-election campaign. And during the political conventions, Hill Harris X ran a survey of black voters and found 24% approve of Donald Trump's job as president.
Hey, you know what else black voters did? They voted for Joe Biden over Bernie Sanders in the primary. So, yeah, that doesn't really surprise me that a quarter of them aren't too fucking aren't too hip or fast. But I don't know. Does that mean he's gonna retake the White House? He could. I mean, I'm certainly not excited for Biden, and my hatred for Trump, it's pretty strong. But I think I have a stronger hatred for the people who like Trump and the people who love him. Well, so, yeah, this whole election's a clusterfuck.
Now, the reason this is so good for Trump is that the poll was conducted during the convention, and it was before his final acceptance speech. So not only did they score massive ratings, but it stands to reason that if they conducted a poll now, Trump's approval rating among black voters would probably be higher, at the very least. And this has been tracking consistently throughout the year, with polls such as Rasmussen and Emerson showing that Donald Trump's support among black voters is fairly high, between 20 and 30%.
Yeah, I'm not sure I trust these. I'm not sure I trust the procedure for these polls taken. 25% of black people. That seems a little high. Seems a little suspect, but whatever Tim cast, whatever pimping, just.
This should scare Democrats. It's long been said that if a Republican gets 20% of the black vote, they will win. And it's starting to look like Donald Trump has certainly earned that already, especially, like I said, with these ratings. But of course, the Democrats are calling for mail-in voting, which is interesting. I have to wonder why this is, right? Dr. Birx and Fauci have both said we can vote in person. And we've seen already from Politico and the Washington Post that mail-in voting hurts minority communities and first-time voters. And then you start to put these pieces together and think maybe the reason the Democrats are trying to push for mail-in voting when the doctors say it's safe to vote in person is because it's going to hurt the black community vote. It's going to disenfranchise people. Now, I can't speculate, but I can say Joe Biden has said that that Donald Trump will be removed from office by the military. But military officials are saying never going to happen. They will not intervene in a dispute. So I have to wonder, with all of this really good news for Donald Trump, is the reason Democrats are pushing for mail-in voting because they want to delegitimize his election victory, which seems to be a given at this point. I don't know, but I will say.
A given? His re-election is a given? All right, we're being a little hyperbolic, Tim. the man's pretty fucking hated by a lot of people, and this isn't just like, oh, CNN told me that Trump's numbers are going down and that America hates him. Like, no, dude, I can name like 20 people I know, and I could probably meet 20 strangers today that hate Trump and probably aren't going to vote for him under any circumstance. But I mean, granted, I live in California, but honestly, I think the sentiment's not incredibly that diverse across the country. I know he's definitely got some support there, and I don't see people coming out in droves for Biden. So I think we're gonna have a similar, if anything, we'll have a similar situation to to 2016, where Trump's victory is going to be due to Hillary's unpopularity, not his popularity. Okay, I think people are going to be coming out and supporting Trump in fucking droves. He's been doing a shit job. He hasn't really kept any of his promises. He's pretended to and made half-assed attempts to, and pretty much epic failed if you're really paying attention to a forgiving mind like Tim Cast. Maybe he thinks he's kept his promises, but he hasn't ended the wars. He hasn't really done much of anything. He hasn't ended the wars, dude. This whole fiasco with all these protests and rioting, he's handled that like shit. He's handled COVID like shit. Yeah, so I don't know. Like, even I've heard a lot of his supporters are starting to break away from him. I don't know where he's getting all this. Oh, boom, out of nowhere, people are just loving the job that Trump's doing. Maybe I think his poll numbers might be going up artificially due to that bullshit Palestinian. Well, not Palestinian. Let me start over. I think his numbers might be going up artificially due to his that bullshit Middle East deal in Israel that he's touting as some sort of victory, as some sort of peace deal that the Palestinians had no part in making at all. And I know he's trying to dress that up as a victory. I think there have been bombs going off on the Gaza Strip every single fucking day since he signed that phony ass deal. So it's complete bullshit. He hasn't done any peace deal in the Middle East. That's pure fiction. So I don't know, man. I think Tim might be. I think he might be just bullshitting. I think he might just be trying to get everyone excited over nothing. But who knows? You know, Donald Trump could definitely squeeze out another win if if Biden fucks this up, which is looking like he will. It looks like both candidates are trying to do the worst job that they can.
We don't know for sure that Donald Trump is going to win. I think it's a safe bet. And the betting odds are improving for Trump, and the polls are improving for Trump. And of course, I mentioned all of this data as well. So I think he's on track for a victory. Things can change. But it really feels like Joe Biden's phoning it in. And you've got Nancy Pelosi saying things like, we're going to get his tax returns even if he loses. Many have suggested this shows they're not really serious about winning at all. In fact, they plan to lose. And perhaps mail-in voting, which is already being contested across this country, is just a way that they can claim Trump didn't really win. Well, let's take a look at these first couple of stories before we get started.
He said some Trump supporter tried to tell you Trump gave $30 million to black colleges and Obama didn't, and he thinks I should give Trump a cookie for that or something. Might need a tax cut. Yeah, I mean, if Trump did that, and like, good on him, that's like whatever. But if that's all it takes for these black students, if that's all it takes for the black students to, vote Republican, that's pretty sad. They should look at the policy and not, how much money Trump happens to give their school. But whatever, dude. Money is everyone's god these days, so can't expect everyone not to be corrupt. Heard the NBA endorsed Biden. Makes sense. I suppose they would. The peace deal means the opposite, same with the CARES Act. Oh yeah, so it's like the wars deal and the who gives a fuck act, basically. Yeah, I got you, man. Let me see. Rob Pelosi said Biden shouldn't debate Trump. Yeah, I heard that. We can watch that. I think Jimmy Dore did a video on it. We can watch that next. I only saw the thumbnail. I haven't seen the video yet, so I'll be reacting to it. But that'd be an interesting move if he didn't debate Trump, I guess. Be interesting indeed.
Head over to timcast.com/donate.
No, never. Fuck you.
If you haven't already. Well, let's read the news first from Fox. Trump campaign rakes in $76 million during Republican National Convention. The GOP convention brought in 147.9 million views across television and online, Fox News has learned.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that like a handful of millionaires all pooled their money together and raised a lot of money for Trump. That doesn't really impress me. And that doesn't mean that Trump's going to win another term.
They say a senior Trump campaign official told Fox News the campaign, the RNC and Trump Victory and Trump MAGA, Make America Great Again campaign, raised $76 million between the kickoff of the convention Monday and Trump's formal nomination acceptance speech. They say last week...
Okay, but was it small dollar donations? Or was it just a couple people? Kind of makes a difference, huh?
Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden's campaign announced the Democratic National Committee and their joint fundraising committees brought in $70 million in fundraising during the 4-day Democratic convention. The Biden campaign held numerous grassroots and high-dollar fundraising events throughout the week. Meanwhile, the RNC brought in 147.9 million total views across television and online between Monday and the end of Thursday night's programming, according to a senior campaign official. The DNC convention, as Fox News previously reported, had 122 million total viewers through television and online. With massive fundraising and record viewership, President Trump's renomination convention was a huge unqualified success, Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh told Fox News Friday. The first and most important thing to point out is that the information about Trump's ratings, it's coming from the campaign, a campaign official. Take it with a grain of salt, but it stands to reason it's true. I mean, we know that the live stream on C-SPAN for the Republican National Convention was 6 times higher than the DNC. But it is true that television ratings between the two favored the Democrats. We can only speculate as to why that is, but when you combine both numbers, Trump and the RNC win. But if you were to turn on CNN or any other mainstream outlet, would they tell you the truth? No, they won't. I can only imagine that Trump right now is looking at the numbers and saying, this is great news. I'm sure he's ecstatic. It's fantastic. We learned about C-SPAN's rating disparity favoring the Republicans. And what does CNN have to say? CNN comes out and says, Biden hits Trump where it hurts in the convention speech ratings by Brian Stelter. And while it is true, yes, that TV alone, Democrats won, it's out of context to ignore their total ratings. And they've done this in the past. And I believe it's stories like this that contribute to their blind spot, their inability to understand what's going on in this country. In an effort to make Trump look silly or stupid and get clicks, they omit key information and then claim Trump is going to be upset.
Yeah, no shit. You know, the CNN's spouting fake news. It's not a big surprise. And I hope Tim's not surprised, because that would be pretty pathetic. But yeah, Brian Stelter, man, I never forget when Alex Jones went on his little epic rant against Stelter. That was probably one of the funniest things I'd ever seen in my life, dude. And it was sad. And I remember Kyle Kalinske, he tried to be like, dude, like I usually laugh at Alex Jones, but this time I just feel bad, like he needs help. I'm like, nah, it's still funny. It's probably the funniest it's ever been. Maybe I'm just a bad person.
No, it's just for them. The more CNN pumps out this fake out-of-context news, the more the resistance members, I'm doing air quotes, think they're winning when they're not. CNN says, President Trump's Thursday night convention speech making the case for his re-election was lower rated than his challenger Joe Biden's speech 1 week ago, according to overnight Nielsen ratings. He says the gap between Biden and Trump was wider earlier in the day, when fewer networks were counted in the total. Nielsen released its final audience estimate late on Friday afternoon, bringing Trump within 1 million viewers. Still, Biden clearly edged out Trump. The Democratic convention was also higher rated than the Republican convention overall, when the audience for all 4 days is tallied up. Here's some important context here. When you watch the RNC, you have these commentators from these networks lying relentlessly. I know, because I turned on PBS and had to turn it off and put on C-SPAN. No wonder C-SPAN's ratings were 6 times that of the DNC. But the DNC wasn't getting this live fact-checking. And I think it was CNN who said, well, it's because they're not lying like Trump is. You see the bias. If somebody was going to watch the RNC, watching it through mainstream sources was giving you a skewed perspective, so they probably didn't. That's important to understand why Trump's ratings were lower. They say the president's ratings obsession is well documented. He has tweeted about ratings hundreds of times, often inaccurately. He raised the subject as recently as Friday morning when he tweeted, "Great ratings and reviews last night, thank you." He did not share any immediate reaction when the initial viewership figures showed him trailing Biden. If history is any guide, he may tout Fox News channel's ratings instead of the overall results. Fox News had by far the biggest audience of any channel on Thursday night with upwards of 9 million viewers. I'm not going to read into the nitty gritty because we already know that the total viewership for Trump was better. But nowhere in this article does he point out that Trump actually won with total viewership, and they did the same thing during Trump's inauguration. When Trump's campaign came out and said that they had record inauguration attendance or viewership, the media lied and said that's not true and only gave you key information like there weren't that many people there. One thing is true. Ratings across the board for both parties are dramatically down, even when you consider online. I don't know why that is. Perhaps people are tired, and perhaps we're all in a bubble, and most people are saying, leave us alone.
I mean, I got a few theories. These candidates are both trash, and the people they surround themselves with are monsters, and all they do is lie, and they're not proposing any real solutions for the country. And the most sane thinking, seeing people can understand that. Even the dumbest of us kind of know that these politicians are only in it for themselves. I know I didn't watch any of those fucking conventions. It never even occurred to me to watch those fucking things. I didn't give a fucking shit what these lying sociopaths were pretending to care about.
No. But it doesn't tell us who's going to win. We won't know for sure until we hop over and take a look at the after-convention polls. A new poll from the Morning Consult shows Donald Trump pulls closer to Biden after the RNC, nearly having a 10-point deficit to 6 points. We can talk about ratings all day and night, but what we're not getting out of those numbers is the satisfaction level of the viewers. Perhaps more people really did watch the DNC, and they hated it, and that's why Trump's approval has gone up. Oh, I'm sorry, he has closed the gap. His polling has gone up between Joe Biden. Perhaps people watched the RNC and realized, well, the RNC was way better, and they talked about things we cared about. Many of the people who called into C-SPAN said, why aren't the Democrats talking about the riots? One woman said watching the RNC gave her hope. In fact, some people have pointed out, notably The Atlantic, this is how Joe Biden...
Isn't that hilarious? That these losers are asking, why are the Democrats talking about the riots? Maybe because they're talking about the shootings that sparked the riots? I don't know, man. We've got a lot of problems in this country, but if I was going to rank them, I'd probably put the riots maybe at 100, maybe the 50th problem that we have. Just keeping perspective with COVID and all the fucking wars and these gangs and even immigration would probably be a bigger issue than these fucking riots. The riots, that's just people pissed off that the country's abandoned them and isn't listening to them and doesn't care whether they live or die. That's what the riots are. The riots are inevitable. So what would the Democrats even have to say about that except for, yeah, we totally failed you. Whoops. And of course they don't have anything to say about the riots. Neither do the Republicans, except, to wag their fucking fingers and say, oh, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't steal because stealing is bad. You shouldn't burn things and take other people's property because it's rude. It's a rude thing to do. Like, I never heard that before. I didn't know that stealing and lighting things on fire was bad. Thanks for enlightening me, Republican. You guys are you're just so philosophically beyond anything I can even comprehend. Appreciate it.
Loses. While riots are going on across this country, the DNC showed protest imagery as if people liked what's happening to their cities. No, the riots and protests across this country are bothering people. That's why the Democrats recently
The riots and protests are bothering people? They're inconvenient? Wow. That's weird. It's almost like that's the whole fucking point of a riot and protest. It's to bother and upset people. To get them to react to something that happened or keeps happening over and over and over again. And people are bothered by this? What the fuck? Well, that's a head scratcher. Why would something that people do to bother someone bother them? I don't know, Tim Cass. I guess we'll never know.
And started talking about law and order. Some people speculate it's why they chose Kamala Harris, because they're realizing the riots are bad news. I can only imagine people watched the DNC, and they were upset about it. Thus, Morning Consult shows Trump closes the gap. But it does get more and more interesting.
Yeah, the riots are bad news, but they're more of a bad fucking sign. The shootings of the unarmed black men, the systematic locking up and jailing of just troves of people, it spanned different races. If we're keeping it honest, that's the bad news. The riots, that's more of like just a bad sign of more bad news to come. Spoiler alert, Tim Cass.
The Iron Range, a Democrat stronghold in Minnesota. You may have seen this story. I talked about it last night on the IRL podcast, so I'll just cover it briefly. This is one of the most democratic places ever. It is like Union City. It is all union laborers. And 6 mayors have come out saying straight up, today we write to formally endorse President Donald J. Trump and Vice President Mike Pence for 4 more years. They mentioned for decades they voted Democrat. They just flipped Republican. We haven't seen this in decades. I think we might be headed to a UK-like landslide in the UK last December. It was a victory not seen in 90 or 100 years, where places that were voting left for 9 decades all of a sudden switched and voted conservative. We may be heading in that direction, and I got more evidence to suggest that may be the case.
Yeah, probably. We probably have immigration and the lack of handling on that to blame for the UK's progressive losses, which is really just the West's fault in general. I know the right wing hates hearing it, but I mean, when you bomb a bunch of people out of their country, where do you think they're gonna go? Okay, but they just want the welfare. They just welfare leeches. No, I think they're not getting shot through the head leeches.
The Hill reports Trump approval rises among...
Said they switched because labor betrayed them? Yeah, man, I think I did hear something about that, dude. I'm not too up on the UK politics. I know Gordon Dimmick covered that shit a lot, and I think even Jamal tried to break it down a little bit. I was a little slow on the uptake. But, I mean, just keep trying, progressives in the UK. At least you guys have single-payer health care. We are left to die over here.
Black and Hispanic voters amid convention. But this is amid the convention. Check this out. This is from just the other day. President Trump's support among black voters rose 9 percentage points amid the Republican National Convention, a new Hill-Harris X poll finds. 24% of registered black voters in the August 22nd to 25th survey, which included the first 2 days of the convention, said they approve of the job Trump is doing as president, while 76% said they disapprove. That is up 9 points from the previous survey conducted August 8th through 11th, where the president received 15% support among this group. The survey found that among Hispanic voters, Trump also grew by 2 points, from 30 to 32%. 44% of overall registered voters in the survey approved of Trump's job as president.
Okay. So with the Hispanic growth, I'm sure there's, I guess there's an upward trend of 2%, but isn't that within the margin of error of like 5% and shit? So it's not really that impressive. But I guess the 9 points, I guess that's something. I mean, I'm not saying Trump ain't going to get reelected. I'm just saying I think it's a lot closer than this guy wants everyone to believe. So we'll see. I'm not wild about either of these candidates. And yeah, they switched because Labour betrayed them over Brexit. So I guess the UK, I guess they're waiting to get out of the was it the European Union or the United Kingdom? I think they're trying to get out of the United Kingdom, Britain. And I guess it was taking too long, I heard. So, I don't know. I just know it was Jeremy Corbyn versus some other guy. But, you don't want to hear me ramble about things I think I know.
1 percentage point dip from the last poll. 82% of Republican voters approve of Trump, a 1 point increase. 87% of Democrat voters disapprove, with 64% along with 64% of independent voters. Now, that is bad news in this poll. So I can certainly point out that the black support is going up, and that may supersede everything. Look, you might have all these Democrats and independents saying, we don't approve of Trump. They say his support among rural voters is at 53%. But it's long been said, if a Republican gets more than 20%, they've won. Maybe this is just one poll, maybe it's wrong, but Rasmussen and Emerson and Zogby have all shown the same thing. Growth among black voters. We've heard some pundits mention that in New York City, many in the black community are saying either I won't vote or I'll vote for Trump. And Republicans are complaining, saying, where's the GOP to come in and talk to these people and offer them solutions? Nowhere. The GOP may be missing a huge opportunity in going after this voter base. I recently spoke with Billy Prempeh. He is a black conservative running in New Jersey for Congress. And he's talked about how the GOP won't get behind him, for the most part, in this area because it's too blue. It's like D plus 16 or something.
Yeah, so he's saying England's the United Kingdom, and England and all the like Ireland and like Scotland and shit, and France and Spain and Italy, aren't they all in the European Union, right? Or was it just Britain trying to get out of the United Kingdom? So I don't know, man. Brexit was pretty complex to me personally, and kind of it was too many people removed from my sphere of life. So I was like, okay, well, just good luck, England, with whatever's going on.
Something.
Cheers, mate.
And they think it's just too expensive and they can't win. But Billy had he's got a good head on his shoulders. His argument is, we got to just do the work here. Otherwise, you'll never take back these urban centers. So by running, he's showing it's possible to at least chip away at the block to slowly, build out that sculpture. Take a look at this, though. An interesting argument from Nate Silver. He's arguing that Joe Biden is, in fact, the silent majority. Maybe that's true. I don't know if it's necessarily what we think of when we think of the silent majority. But I want to talk about Biden's campaigning and how I think it's not going to be good enough. Nate Silver says, it seems to me that if Biden is at 51% of the polls, but his supporters aren't super vocal and don't have a ton of yard signs out there and stuff, then Biden voters could make a good...
Okay, got it. Britain, it's to leave the European Union equals Brexit. So Britain's trying to get out the European Union. Yeah, I got it. I thought like the United Kingdom was like involved or some shit, but I guess in a roundabout way, I guess it is. All right.
Good claim to being the silent majority. Yeah, maybe. I disagree, though. The issue with the silent majority is they're not talking to the polls, or they're lying because they're hiding. That would mean that Joe Biden is ahead in the polls because the silent majority is silent. Get it? That's the point. You can't be the silent majority if you're vocalizing your support in the polls for Joe Biden. Still, an interesting argument, and I would recommend any Trump supporter or anyone who plans on voting for him, make sure you do not get complacent. you better make sure you do everything in your power to get your ballot and vote, and make sure it's done properly. We can see funny things like this from Joe Walsh. He says, I am a conservative, working my A off to help you win. You're a good man, but please get out of your basement, get on a plane, go to Kenosha, please lead, comfort, heal. If you don't, Trump could win. That's all. Time for tequila for me. You know what he points out? It's not being ignored. Most people are seeing the same thing. More good news for Donald Trump. The editorial board for the...
I mean, did Trump go to Kenosha? Not that it matters. I don't think his supporters really care, but I'm just curious.
For the New York Post says, 2020 campaigns go into high gear, except for Biden, who will apparently be resting. Yeah, I mean, who didn't see this coming? Joe Biden has been hiding in his basement, a coward, hiding from the conflict and the chaos, and he won't do interviews, and he's barely doing anything. Most of us just assume his Twitter account is run by some intern and not him. He's essentially a sock puppet candidate. He's just there for the cameras, so that people say, I remember that guy, but he's not really campaigning. The Post writes, with the conventions over, one of the strangest presidential races in American history moves into high gear. Or, well, sort of. It's still not clear how much Democratic nominee Joe Biden will campaign. He's so far only talked about visiting 4 swing states between now and November 3rd, and says his campaign is still figuring out
I can't take any more
how
Tim
he'll
Cast
do even
and
that.
fucking Joe Biden.
Biden is managing to meet with special interest donors. He dropped news of his travel plans Thursday at a fundraiser with trial lawyers.